I'm Dennis Lim. I'm the artistic director of the New York Film Festival, and I'm a member of the jury this year.
I am Eduardo Williams, and I'm a filmmaker. That's all. And I'm in the jury also.
I've known Beatrice for I'm not sure how many years. We've shown several of her films in the New York Film Festival. I followed her work even before I knew her, and I was very happy that there was a program here this week and I had the opportunity to be in conversation with her. She was the one who contacted me on behalf of you in the festival to ask if I was going to be in Europe, and of course, I mean, your dates were lined up very nicely with the end of Cannes this year. I was going to be here already. I had been following the programming of the festival from afar and had admired it, and as soon as she suggested that I come, I was very happy to accept. And it was nice to see her films here this week as well. I think I've shown her works in shorts programs with multiple filmmakers, but to have a dedicated program of her work, I thought it was really nice to see them in a certain sequence and to see them all together on the big screen. So.
I met Beatrice in a film festival in Spain called Punto de Vista, and after that we shared our films with each other, and that's how we met. And now I'm living in Athens, so I was not so far. I was not in Argentina, but yeah, that's how we met.
I think for me, I think the fact that you're even questioning what queer is suggests that this is an important project of the festival, because I think a queer festival that knows and has already decided what the definition of queer is not an interesting festival to me. And I think the fact that you're bringing it up, the program suggests a certain openness to this definition, a certain curiosity, a way of asking questions about what it is. I think that's what a queer festival should be. If we're going to have queer festivals today, I mean, the definition of the word is not static. So I think it should, be constantly in flux, and it should be a conversation. And I had asked Teddy earlier this week if his films had ever shown in a queer festival, and you said only one other festival, I think.
So, yeah.
One other queer festival. So
yeah, I don't know. I think my film, in my normal life, I don't really try to label my films or to think if they are in this category or the other in every sense, like documentary fiction or whatever. So, but I've been told by other people that my films were queer for them, which was interesting. And then if I have to think about it, I just, in a very general way, I think it's just not being in the norm, or not being in the hegemonic way of making films. So it's very broad, but if it's that, my films would be there. But yeah, I'm happy to also, more than me looking for or thinking about which labels go well with my film, I'm happy to know how people put them in different categories and why, and just receive that information and think about that and think what I feel about that, right?
I think the idea of filmmakers like Apichatpong, like Teddy, I have been, for the last few years, I've taught a class on queer cinema, and I've tried to bring in filmmakers like Apichatpong, Teddy, Chantal Ackerman, Lucrecia Martel, who are not primarily discussed as queer filmmakers, but I think there's something quite queer about the way they think about cinema, about the form and the language of cinema that they're working with. And I think there's also sometimes queer content or subject matter, but I think what's really interesting and exciting about the work is the queerness of the form and of the language. And these are filmmakers who typically circulate in different circuits. They're considered art filmmakers. They show at festivals that are not necessarily or in any way queer, but I think it can be interesting to think about what is queer about their work, especially in the contemporary context. I think that theme came up in our discussions. Obviously, we had a long, we had a week together and we had a lot of deliberations. And I've also seen it as a programmer, just like watching films through the year. And I think there is a turn inward as well. I agree with Judith. We had conversations about this over the last few days, and I don't know that I don't know. I think the world is complicated and confusing and like unpleasant in many ways today, and I can understand not wanting to deal with it. But and I say this not as a critique of the program or of necessarily of contemporary cinema, but it's a tendency I've noticed as well. A turn inwards, a certain like the idea of drawing on your own experience, while valid, to me isn't enough. I feel like your own experience has to interact with others and with the world. And I don't know. I've also sensed this in cinema of the last year or so maybe, and it might have to do with the moment we're living through. I hate to generalize. I mean, I know that programmers also work with what's available and what's out there, and I would be very reluctant to make a claim about the state of cinema from one program or even from like 1 year of cinema. But yeah, that was something we noticed, and I think the films we responded to seem to at least be in conversation with something beyond the personal. The idea that the personal is also social, cultural, political, I think is something that we happen to, I think, as jurors value and look for in the films.
Yeah. Me as a filmmaker, yeah, I think about that, and as a filmmaker in my work, I think about that also. So yeah, and I think I'm not so interested in showing only what I think or what I feel. So I try to, in different films, I try to look for ways that get me out of myself, let's say, or force me to do films that are not only about my ideas or my feelings. So there's different ways of doing this, and other people find different ways, but I'm always trying to find different ways of connecting with other people, of connecting with other territories, connecting with other ideas, feelings. I feel we see that in cinema a lot, but I feel like even if you do a film that in the beginning is not talking about you or about nothing that has to do with you, then it will always talk about you because it's you who are doing it in many ways.
I wrote a book recently on the films of Hong Sang-soo. Actually, it's supposed to be just about one film. It's part of a series by a publisher called Fireflies Press. They invited 10 writers to pick a film that in some ways defines or is a way to explore contemporary cinema. So I wrote my book about Hong Sang-soo's film, Tale of Cinema, and use it as a way to explore his other films, but also to think about certain things I've been interested in exploring in contemporary cinema. I mean, a few ideas in the book are, like, Hong's films are always called small, or like minor films, or and I'm interested in the idea, like, what is a small film today? Like, what does small mean? Like, who decides that on those terms, and what does it mean to work with and against this idea of scale? And I'm also interested in autobiographical cinema, like in a way that, like what Teddy was just saying, like how can you use the materials of your life? How can you use your own obsessions and fascinations, but turn them into something else? Turn them into something that is actually not about your life, but about something else entirely. And I think he's a great example of a filmmaker who constantly refers to himself, or seems to, but always goes away in some other direction. So yeah, it's a book I wrote recently, and I think Hong was a figure who allowed me to explore a lot of aspects of like narrative cinema today that I was interested in thinking about.